and we'd have no idea. We just have signs of this, right? The microphone broke down and then no one fixed it, so we know there's no God back there. A human being's insight is like this. They don't know what's going on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His knowledge is all-encompassing. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعِندَهُ مَفَاتِحُ الْغَيْبِ لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا هُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعِندَهُ مَفَاتِحُ الْغَيْبِ, that He has the keys of the unseen. No one knows it except Him. وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ, that there's nothing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. Any leaf that falls, anything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows it. In fact, when the person begins to make intentions in their heart, and no one on earth knows that intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in their heart. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is all-encompassing. And the absolute key to learning how to struggle or how to surrender yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to live an upright life, is to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always seeing you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in fact, criticizes human beings that become scared of other humans, but they're not ashamed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَسْتَخْفُونَ مِنَ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَسْتَخْفُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they're afraid and they're ashamed of the people, and they're not ashamed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Quran, one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the day of resurrection. And some people call it the day of judgment or the day of resurrection. But one of the things you'll notice is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses many different terms for the day of resurrection. And the more terms that you realize or that you read in the Quran, each one has a characteristic to give you a deeper understanding of what the day of resurrection is. And so I'll just mention some of those to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَوْمَ تَأْتِي كُلُّ نَفْسٍ تُجَادِلُ عَنْ نَفْسِهَا. The day when every soul will come, where every soul will come to defend itself. And so when you see, in recent court cases, where someone says, I want to defend myself, and they're like, you're crazy, what about your lawyers, what about this? No. In fact, in reality, everyone's going to have to defend themselves. تُجَادِلُ عَنْ نَفْسِهَا. You're going to be standing up and testifying. And just like you would be accused of something in this life, and you would want to know, you're going to be accused of something, that you prepare your life in accordance to getting off in the end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ نَفْسٌ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ. The day when a person's wealth and a person's children will avail them in no way. And one of the things you'll see, and from the prophets, from Musa and Isa and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in each people that they were sent to, one of the consistent arguments that they used against the prophets was that the prophet can't be telling the truth because we have more money and we have more children. Does that sound like a logical argument? You say, no, it doesn't. But a lot of people get fooled by that. They think that the person with the most wealth must therefore be the one who is most correct, which is not correct. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that on that day, the person's wealth will mean nothing. And the children that they had and all the things that they accumulated will mean nothing. Only the person that comes with the righteous action. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about the different relations that the person has, and how on the day of resurrection, the person will run away from these people. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the day when a person will run away from their own brother, and from their father, and from their mother, from everyone. In fact, on the day of resurrection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the person is willing to allow the entire earth, all the human beings, to go to hellfire so long as they'll be saved. To show you the glimpse of how much the person doesn't care for others on the day of resurrection only if they save themselves. And so when a person starts to realize what day is coming up for them, then they start to prepare accordingly. But there's good news. And if you look at people, and this good news is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our creator. He created us. And so when you see people that talk about, the path to happiness in life, really what they're doing is they take the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they put kind of a secularist label onto it. But it is deen, because Allah made us in a way that our happiness only comes from turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll just give you an example of that. A motivational kind of those how to be happy speakers will tell a person that if you want to be happy, you really want to be happy, wake up before you go to work and go do some exercise. If you really want to be happy. So the person, he says, don't exercise in your home, go out in the street and exercise. And he says, I don't care if it's dark out or it's Fajr time, go out and walk in the street. And then he says that while you walk in the street, don't just walk and exercise for no reason. He says, exercise your mind. How do you exercise your mind? He says, by thanking God or your creator or whoever you want, Mother Nature, thank anybody you want, but be thankful, which is exactly, the word kufr means to be unthankful. In its original literal term, means to be unthankful. Kafir is someone who's unthankful, basically, that they hide the blessings of God underneath the rug. And a Muslim is someone who's thankful. And so if you're Muslim and you're not spending that time being thankful, then you're not really understanding the essence of being a Muslim and surrendering yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so as I listen to this person speaking, I realize that this path of happiness, the whole point is for this person to emulate the life of a Muslim. And when a Muslim stays away from their deen, and then they come up at the end of a lecture like this and they say, I'm not happy, I would say, go back and practice your deen. And actually surrender yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's not only just a virtuous duty that you have to do, it's for your own benefit. It's so that success comes to you in this life and in the hereafter. And of that first level of success is happiness, which everyone is looking for. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ. Remember me and I'll remember you. And so you're going on the bus or something like that. You want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remember you. When other people are listening to their music or others are reading this, reading that, you sit back and you start remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remember you. And I'm telling you, that is the juice of your life. The happiness comes from that. Of sitting down. And I'm not just saying after salah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allah Akbar, doing it voluntarily. When you're on your own and nobody requires of you to do it. And you come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with those nawafil. In Islamic history, there was a man by the name of Nuh ibn Maryam. He was a very righteous man. He had some servants. And one of the servants that he had was a servant by the name of Mubarak. A very righteous servant also. This is the time, the tabi'een. And so he had a grape farm. What he did on the grape farm, he sent the servant out to work on the grape farm. After months of working on the grape farm, he basically told Mubarak to go and get some grapes for him. So Mubarak came back, brought him some grapes. When he ate the grape, it was sour. And he said, these grapes are sour, go and get me some sweet grapes. So Mubarak went back, came back, and brought him the grapes. He tasted it, they were sour. And then he said, these are sour, go get me some grapes, some sweet grapes. So he went back, looking for ripe grapes. He brought some more grapes back. Nuh ibn Maryam tasted they were sour. And then he got really angry. And then he said, don't you know the sweet grapes from the sour grapes? And Mubarak said, no, I don't. He said, my job was not to eat the grapes. My job was to work on the farm and not steal a single grape. And I've never tasted a single grape after all these months of working. And I just want you to imagine, here in Canada we have these strawberry picking places, right? Have you been there? I've been there.